applause now, so when I mess up. This was my first time doing this. This is a song that I wrote. It really tells the story. I
We need to do Old Freedom first. That's what we're doing. Old Freedom. We need to do Old Freedom
Okay,
first.
I can't play it.
That's okay. We can sing.
Well,
If you don't help. For me a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No segregation. No segregation. No segregation over me, and before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Okay.
tired. We were tired of inequality, racial ideology, bigamy, white supremacy, and we were tired of being denied the right to B-O-T-E. We weren't just out there trying to do something. The march was inspired by the killing of Jimmy Lee Jackson. It was inspired. But the march, this setup really began in 1963 when SNCC came in and prepared us. Somebody asked me why was Selma selected. I need to find that out, but I don't know why they chose to come to Selma in '63. But I'm glad they did. Everything worked out. Dr. Martin Luther King believed in nonviolence, and he taught us we were a unit, we had unity, and we had a leader. Those are the three things that made the 1965 demonstration successful. Unity, a leader, nonviolent. Had we been violence against violence would have been zero. But we started to go to Montgomery just to march. And the law attacked us, put violence on us. They helped the cause. Because around the nation, they saw the law beat down on the people they were supposed to be protecting and serving. I was in the 12th grade, taking chemistry, supposed to be the first one to graduate. Mom and Dad didn't finish school. I was scared to demonstrate, but I wanted to go to college. It was a long time ago in 1965. We got tired of all the racial jive. Being younger than the school had to be put on pause. We had to sacrifice our lives for a greater cause. We became soldiers of a non-violent infantry, fighting for justice and equality. We marched, demonstrated, and we went to jail. It was the freedom song that we sang that helped us to prevail. You don't understand how powerful a song is, like the song we just sang. I think the greatest song that I had to sing was "Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Right." That was it. There will be no nothing, that was it. said we can't show the love a non-violent victory. So we're fighting for justice and equality. More than demonstrated today and I went to jail. Little song we sang helped us to prevail. We got time, we got time, we got time, oh we got time, we got time. Yeah, just to prevail. Church is where we satisfy. Church is where we satisfy. Help us to survive. I said help us to succeed. Brown Chapel, First Baptist, but Tabernacle took the lead. A lot of times in mass meetings, we pray and sing, we show the song. Sometimes we would receive that there was a break, that there was a more. Can you believe it? We're in church. We're singing, we're praying, we're strategizing, and the enemy somehow sent threats that there was a bomb. We got time, we got time, we got time, we got time, oh we got time. We got time, and not just sitting around. Oh, the movement to bread from the Selma to nationwide. Dr. Martin Luther King became our good guide. We started to Montgomery, only in Montana breeze. But the strange truth met us. Oh, at the reach. Tear gas, little clothes, tear gas, little clothes, right by here, I have to go back to tears, excuse me, that's horrible. The bomb rush, they beat us, got something to show you. Keep it clap. Keep it clap. Can you imagine this upside your head? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine having a cattle prod? They take the shark and they use the tear gas. When they throw tear gas, it's on the ground because the gas is gonna go up. But Lord knows, I can speak for myself. Tear gas hit me, South Hall panic. So I rub my eyes. The more you rub your eyes, the more it burns. The more you rub your eyes, the more it burns. But the bad part is, tear gas goes out in the throat. And you feel like you're gonna die. Cut your breath off. While you're thinking you can't breathe, you rub your eyes, imagine a lawman taking a cattle prod and shot you. Cold. 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 Oh, we got time. We got time. We got time. I do smile. Tell you that Thank you. Y'all come and talk to me. I'm going to ask these cards around 2 sets. They start from the Teacher's March, Bloody Sunday, Selma, Montgomery, and the three that I never thought when I was marching. I didn't think about this. That the yellow one, they got me on the cover of books. Y'all better clap for this man. I like to use visuals, y'all. So they're drumming on the back. And then I got a museum on Broad Street that's got all of these images in it. They're here. Here they are. Well, when you look at those pictures, I'm carrying that big flag. I marched all the way to Montgomery, and the reason I got a chance to is because my cousin Charles Morgan was a student leader, and when they got ready to choose the people to go to Montgomery, they could only choose maybe between 400 and 500 because Highway 80 East was a single lane, and then it changed over to a 2. So the permit said that we couldn't have X number of people. So in order for me to get there, me and my partner ran up and got that big flag that you see on there. And that big flag is what took me all the way to Montgomery. Had not been for that, we don't know. I saw, in fact, some people came by and they asked me about 300 to 400. No, that information is wrong. A lot of information is wrong. We started out with 400 and moved over. But a lot of people, thank you for that. A lot of people say that they marched all the way. That's not true. The first 400, it was that lived, marched the first way, and then they were bringing them in on buses and trucks and cars. They were studied. I don't know too many of them march all the way now. And you know the biggest that march all the way. When we got to St. Jude, they came in. But I can tell you that other than the tear gas, the greatest fear I had when I marched all the way to Montgomery, since I didn't trust the law, I looked in the tree. You know what I was looking for? Snipes. As I said, these folks would take me out and that's it. I'd never know, and they wouldn't get to know. But that was my only fear marching to Montgomery. Otherwise, sleeping in the mud and in the cold and changing clothes or putting, didn't matter to me. Thank you for putting.
And now you stay around, because we're gonna sing later, ain't gonna turn me, we're gonna sing, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, so you just wait around. We're now gonna hear from Diane Harris.
Oh?
You can stay. You can
Yes,
stay.
you can stay.
Lutheran Academy and College at that time, a foot soldier from that school, and she will tell you her story. May they survive.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I will not present you a musical rendition as Albert has done. I can't top that. But I'd like to share, I'd like to share part of my personal experience as a 1965 foot soldier. Of course, we know it was in 1965. At that time, I was a 15-year-old student, 10th grade student, attending a small Lutheran school called Alabama Lutheran Academy and College. We were trying to figure out, just as the other students had already begun marching, how we could participate. But one day, a student from the local R.B. Hudson High School came over and invited us to participate. My story is a little bit different because the other students were already marching. We did something that we didn't really want to do, but we wanted to be a part of the movement because our parents, the movement was all about our parents getting to right the vote. So we ended up actually walking off the campus, leaving school. I do not advocate leaving school under normal circumstances, but this was an exceptional experience. I'd like to say there were three major sets of marches. There was the ministers' march, the teachers' march, and the student march. And so that's where the students came in, as I did as well, as many other students did. I'll say I participated in a total of, let me say, music, as we've already heard, was a very, very vital part of the movement. I read somewhere on Facebook where it said, music gave us courage, it gave us strength, it shielded us from hate, and it kept us sane. Those freedom songs did all those things and more. The very first freedom song that I learned was Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. I thought I was gonna sing it, but we gotta wait and sing it. But that was my very first song that I learned. I participated in a total of 4 marches. The first one was on Bloody Sunday. I tell my story, and I tell it very honestly. I did not get to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. My brother and I were at the back of the line, the very back of the line. And I say to this day, it was God's saving grace that we were not on the bridge that day. Because as we all know, that was the day that the marchers were brutally attacked. I did experience some sense of violence on that day. My brother and I had to run back to the church. And the church, we ran back to this church, Brown Chapel. Brown Chapel was always left open. The churches served as our safe havens. While trying to come back, of course, we experienced the scenario that Albert explained about the tear gas and all. We could hear marchers yelling, screaming, crying because they were being attacked. But mostly we could hear the horse hooves. Those were the possemen that were chasing the marchers back on this side of town. My brother and I did experience somewhat a sense of violence because one of the possemen ran us all the way back on horseback to the steps of this church. That was a very, very scary experience. So that was my first experience on Bloody Sunday. I was arrested. Yes, I'm the jailbird, but thankfully with no criminal record. We were told that we would have criminal records the rest of our lives. We were also taught that when you were getting ready to march, all marches began here at Brown Chapel. We were told that you would never know what day, when, or how long you may be incarcerated. But this particular day, we as students were marching, always leaving the church here, going to the Dallas County Courthouse. And that day we saw a fleet of yellow school buses. We immediately knew that someone was going to be arrested. Well, some 225 students were arrested on that day. And my brother and I were part of that. You dare not ask where you were going to go. You couldn't speak to the people because these were your oppressors. We were transported to a prison camp some 7 miles west of Selma. We were aware that we had a prison camp very close. That prison camp was called Camp Selma. When we got to Camp Selma, there were absolutely no prisoners there. We did not see the first prisoner. The prisoners had been transported somewhere else, don't know where to this day, but we were fingerprinted, mug shots taken just as we were criminals. And that's when we were told that we would have criminal records the rest of our lives. We were then placed in jail cells, and as you saw the billy club, the law enforcement would take those billy clubs and rattle them across the cage, seemed like cages, across the jail cells, and that definitely gave us fear. That was February of '65. We thought we were going to spend the entire night, but we didn't. We were brought back to the Dallas County Courthouse the following morning, about 6 or 6:30. We barely got home in time for our mother to see us before she left to go to work. My third experience was here in Selma. That place still exists. It was called the National Guard Armory, a very large building. This is where the National Guards would come every month to do their monthly guard duty. We didn't have to be transported because we were marching from downtown Selma to the National Guard Armory, which is a very short distance. Even remember these were Jim Crow days, everything separate, not equal, to the back of everything. We were also escorted to the back of the building by our mean old Sheriff Jim Clark. That night was a very, very, very scary night. We ended up spending the entire night that time. The first arrest, as I stated, was just a couple of hours. It took longer to process us then, but this night we spent the entire night. The boys were asked to push the walls. They were violently attacked with the billy clubs. I say to this day that they may have had some sense of decency because they stuck us girls with the cattle prods. And the cattle prods do just what they say. They send electric shock to your body, and they're used really to prod cattle. We were treated just as if we were animals. Unfortunately, I was one of those girls that got stuck in my right arm with the cattle prod, but I did spend the entire night there. Lastly, my fourth march was, again, I'm honest when I tell my story, I did not march one step from Selma to Montgomery. But guess what? I got there. It was a very unusual way. One night at a mass meeting, we were told if you wanted to go to Montgomery, that a fleet of Greyhound buses would be provided for you. That entailed meaning leaving the day before the major march in Montgomery, which meant you were not going to come back until the day of the march. That was hard for my mother to decide to let us go. But me being as persistent as I was then, I kept begging until she finally gave us permission to go. She was able to come and see us off at the church here. And as far as the eyes could see down this street, it was called Sylvan Street at the time, not Martin Luther King. As far as the eyes could see, we saw Greyhound buses. that was a very jubilant ride, unlike the one to the prison camp. Because we were given very warm speeches, and we knew then that that march was the ultimate of all marches. We ended up being transported to St. Jude Catholic, on the campus of St. Jude Catholic School, where we spent the night. And Joyce and Albert and others that were foot soldiers can testify that that was a very jubilant night. There we encountered a wonderful concert. It was called The Night the Freedom Stars Fell on Alabama. They didn't mean the celestial stars from heaven. They meant the actors and movie stars. Perhaps you may know some of these people, have heard of them. Peter, Paul, and Mary. Joan Baez. Dick Gregory. Sammy Davis Jr. And the list just goes on. Eartha Kitt. And of course, all of us girls had that wonderful crush on Harry Belafonte. But we heard all these wonderful actors and comedians, the Cartwright Boys from Bonanza. Many of you all watched the Westerns. So we had a wonderful concert that night, and at the culmination of the concert, we were told to how to prepare for the major march, which was going to be the next morning to the state capitol. We were told that we will march 2 by 2. Do not look your hecklers in the face, because, or in the eyes, face, because that was what they would want you to do. Look directly, straight ahead, not to your left, not to your right, but straight ahead. Our goal was to get to the Capitol safely. That was the ultimate of all the marches. That day, some 25,000 people gathered on the steps of the Alabama State Capitol, and we heard Dr. King give his wonderful "How long, not long" speech. And some of those words said, they said we wouldn't get here. We'd only get here over their dead bodies. But we are here, and we're here to tell the world, ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. That was a beautiful, awesome day, because everybody that was there, people of all races, all church denominations, showed nothing but love. You had no enemies on that march. All of your fellow friends showed love and unity. I'll close by saying, we were brought back home. Our parents were not. President Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Voting Rights Act on August 6th of 65, but it was not until the fall until our parents got a chance to become registered voters. My mother immediately went and became a registered voter, but it was somewhere like in October of 65. To this day, I'm still taking voting registration serious. I did not stop at age 15. I'm still trying to be a warrior here in Selma for voting rights, and the struggle continues. That's my story.
But good for you, they did not leave me much to say. Because I think we have very similar experiences. Can you hear me okay? I don't think I need the mic. We have very similar experiences. They were not all the same, but those of us who are foot soldiers try to tell the authentic stories and not make up anything to make it sound good. I didn't go to jail. I don't wear that badge of honor. And I hate it. I wish I had gone to jail. Oh, Patricia, I didn't see you come in. Come on up front, another foot soldier. We're going to ask her to tell a snippet of her story as soon as I finish. But I'm a child of the Jim Crow South. Grew up here in Selma, Alabama. As they say, born and bred in the South. But I love it. I love the South. I'm a grit. Girl raised in the South. And I'll always be a grit. Left a couple of times, didn't work out, but I tried to be something else. Moved north, didn't like it at all. Came back to the South. But in 1965, my mother was an 8th grade social studies teacher with a bachelor's degree and some work towards her master's. She could not vote. Students were leaving R.B. Hudson High School. And my sister and I were continuing to go to school because she was on the faculty there. But then one morning she said to us, you girls stay here and go on down to First Baptist Brown Chapel, wherever you need to go, so you can participate in the movement. Do you all know the expression, jumping up and down happy? We were jumping up and down happy. So that was the beginning of the participation in the movement for my sister and me. I have one sister who's 11 months older than I am and about 11 inches short. And we called her our militant midget. So just as Diane's brother was following her, I was following my sister. She did go to jail the same night Diane went to the armory to jail. My sister was jailed at that time also. But my mother could not vote, and at one point she was called into the principal's office. She and another teacher, Mrs. Margaret Moore, her picture is on the wall over there. And they were accused of encouraging students to leave school for the voting rights movement. When she got to the principal's office, the superintendent was there. Now remember, this is Jim Crow South. The principal was black because it was an all-black high school, segregated high school. The superintendent was white. He accused them of encouraging students to leave. They denied it because they were breadwinners in their families. But they went back to their classrooms, and I have to relate this story to you. I didn't know this until about 10 years ago. A classmate of mine passed away, and I went to his funeral at one of the local funeral homes here, and when I came outside, a young man walked up to me and he said, aren't you Mrs. Parrish's daughter? And I said, I am. I said, why do you ask? He said, I'll never forget your mom. And I said, why is that? He said, because I was in her homeroom in 1965, and some of us had gone to school, and we wanted to leave and go down to the church to march. And he said, I told her, Miss Parrish, we don't want to be here. We want to go down to the church to march. He said, she didn't say a word. She turned to the blackboard, picked up a piece of chalk, and wrote, I cannot see what happens behind my back. And of course, you know what happened? They left. The students were, sometimes there were policemen outside, and I know Margaret Jones more. I heard this story just the other day. She told some students to go out the side door. So even though they were threatened with their jobs, they continued to do what they knew they needed to do. They couldn't come out here and march. They couldn't come down to the churches and march like we did. But they did what they could. And that was to get the students and give the students the opportunity to leave school to come march for the voting rights movement. We have so much to tell, we can't tell it all. It's too much. The story is too big. And the individual stories are too big. But we do know that those of us who participated in the movement, and sometimes we're asked, did you do it just so you could miss school? No. All of us knew why we were skipping school. That was thrown into us during those mass meetings, the importance of what we were doing and the importance to keep the fight going. When we marched, we march for a purpose. Can you imagine hearing all the rhetoric and knowing that your mother already had the right to vote according to the Constitution, but it was not enforced? Her first attempt to register, she was asked to recite the preamble to the Constitution. Don't groan, she did it. You know why she did it? Because she required her 8th grade social studies students to learn the preamble to the Constitution. And when I found that out, I vowed that she would never teach me. And at that time, we could register for our classes. And I would always get in line at the table for another teacher, not my mother. But she explained that she wanted her students to understand the phrases and some words in the preamble, because after all, although not treated as so, the students were all a part of these United States of America. Yes. And they needed to understand as much as possible about America. So, I marched with my sister. Did not get arrested, but Albert poked me with the billy club so I could get a feel for it. But what we did gave us the voting rights bill that Congress passed and that the President signed on August the 6th, 1965. And yes, we would go back and do it all over again. So with that, I'm going to ask Patricia to tell you briefly her story of the arrest. Come on up, Patricia.
Good morning. My story is similar to hers. I was arrested with 25 or more students at the Old National Guard Armory. We lived in GWC home. I'm proud of that, so proud of that, because a lot of the districts didn't, include us over there.
Right.
So we left Brown Chapel. We was like a decoy. Sent us out, and they wouldn't bother the other one. We got down at the back armory. A bus picked us up, carried us to Camp Selma. We stayed about a week. Our parents didn't know where we were. We stayed on one big cell back, maybe back this side. We didn't see any prisoner, but we knew they was there. Because we could hear them. We was given biscuits and grits. I don't know how they found us, but they did, and they brought us back to the project. And most of the people that went with me was the one that stayed in the project. We stayed there for about a week. I don't know how I got back. I don't know who, got us back, but we did. I liked that though. And skipping school, no, it wasn't joy for me to go and skip school because I didn't want to. But I knew I had a purpose to do for my life, my children, and my mom, and all people that didn't have a right to vote. Thank you. And I didn't get shot with a cannonball.
Okay, do we have any other foot soldiers that might have come in that we didn't have the proper? Linda, come on up, Linda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First and foremost, I did not march on the bridge. I didn't get arrested. I didn't get cattle prodded or beat or any of that. But I was a member of this church. And Reverend H. Lewis was a very dynamic preacher, fearless. I was raised in the George Washington Carver Homes Projects, about 8 doors down from this church. Every mass meeting, I was here at 11 years old, sitting in the church. There were 2 little girls standing in the pulpit, singing freedom songs, leading us in those freedom songs before Dr. King would enter this church. And they would just sing those freedom songs. I just know them by heart because we did it every time we came in here, before he came in. Dr. King sometimes would come around the side of the church and he would greet the children. I'd go and, we'd run around there and shake his hand. But when he came in the church, even at 11 years old, I felt something different. You know, it was just something in the spirit of the church. You know, everybody just felt so. I didn't know exactly what we were fighting for. I knew, you know, we were discriminated against, but I didn't understand the voting rights at that age. There were people that came from out of state that couldn't stay in the hotels, black people, white people, and they would stay with us in those George Washington Carver Homes projects. And if, you know, we had stairs, because I lived in 528D, and D meant you had A, B, C, D, four bedrooms. Anyway, upstairs, we would jump across the people that came in from out of state to stay with us, as my grandmother was making them coffee and grits and all of that, going to school. But on Saturdays when they would have the protests, that's when I got a chance to be active as far as marching. They'd form the lines outside. My mother worked at a restaurant downtown on Broad Street called Thirsty Boy, and she was a cook. Black people could not enter that restaurant to eat. We had to eat outside. I mean, order our food outside. So we were going to protest that restaurant, and my mother told us that do not get in that line because I could lose my job, because her boss knew us, because he would drive her home from work and come inside sometimes and, you know, encourage us to make good grades in school and tell us he'd give us $1 or whatever for making an A. And I made straight A's, of course. But at any rate, his name was Mr. Warren. And so I defied my mother's orders that day and got in that line to protest and to boycott. And we got a little signs, and they told us to line up at twos, and we had to, you know, we were singing our freedom songs and everything. And it was just so, I just knew that what we were fighting for was so important, even at that age. I didn't understand it all, but I just loved everything that I was a part of during that time. And one more little story I'll share with you. There were some people, there was a priest that came to our house that, you know, asked my mother for permission for us to go on a trip, to stay. We left, it was about 4 different families. My sister and I went. My sister's name was Ella, she was my baby sister. We went on a bus. They sponsored a bus trip for us to go to Detroit, Michigan, to stay with white families. And the white family that we stayed with, they had a little girl and a little boy. And the little girl asked me, she said, "Would you plait my hair like that?" And I didn't know, you know, I tried to plait her hair and it kept coming apart. And I said, "Well, why won't it stay?" You know, but this was my first encounter of being close, you know, around white people. And they took us, we stayed there for about a week or so, and they took us to take swimming lessons. But the biggest thing that I remember is they took us on a boat in Detroit called the Boblo boat. It's my understanding that it still exists, I don't know. But we went across there to Canada, and I was like, wow, you know, living and coming from the projects to be able to go on a vacation, you know, because my mother was, we were poor. And I'll round this up and finish it by saying, ironically, when I became an adult, I started working for the Office of Voter Registration. And ironically, after that, I retired from the state of Alabama, working as Director of Personnel for the Secretary of State. So, you know, who is the chief election official for the state for voting rights. I got a lot more to say about my experience, but I'll leave it right there, because every time I think about it and talk about it, I get filled up. I really do. So
Yeah, we used to work together too.
yeah, I worked with him. I remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing.
Good morning, good morning.
All right.
I know y'all was looking at me and said, he's too young. And it's true. When Dr. King was coming to the church, I lived at the first house right there, 322B, UWC Homes. I was 3 years old. Listened to Mr. Sahal, who taught me. Ms. O'Neill was my Sunday school teacher. Randy was one of my heroes. But I was a little kid, and I can remember Dr. King coming to the church. Back then, the church was surrounded by a fence, and all children would run up to the fence and call Dr. King. He would get out his big black car and he would come over to the fence and shake our hands. 3 years old, and I still remember this. George Washington Carver Homes projects is what we sit in the middle of right now. And as Ms. Aaron said, it was looked over for many, many, many years. But I have to be humble. In 2014, one night I came home just looking at the historical landmarks. And what I came across that George Washington Carver Homes, where I grew up, bred, and lived, was not a part of the historical national landmark. And I brought this to the attention of the city of Selma. I went to the Archives and History of Montgomery, Alabama, and me and the young lady could not find it. Months later, I presented it to the Selma City Council, and right now, it stands right beside Brown Chapel. It's a national landmark sign. And the words, and he don't even know this, where I get this history from. It's from Randy. In 2013, I organized the first GWC Homes reunion, and Randy was speaking. And the words Randy said, that Dr. King and John Lewis said, if it wasn't for the people in GWC, the movement probably never would have happened. It feels so good that people I grew up with that was a part of history. Is Aaron back there? Used to get on me by running across the street. My Sunday school teacher, Ms. Sahal, taught me how to job, and Randy. A lot of people think Sammy Davis Jr. was the first black man on TV. Well, the first black man on radio that I remember was Randy Williams. Anyway, I just want to say that. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna close with this portion with singing that song, and all foot soldiers, please come back. Bruce and Linda, Patricia,
Well,
we're gonna sing, ain't gonna let who?
Well, she's coming up. You heard them. 90% of the children made that movement. 90% of children. Man, isn't that so? We were children there.
We're gonna sing, ain't gonna, you need to help us now.
What were we singing?
Ain't gonna let nobody turn
Ain't
me
gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching from the freedom land. Ain't gonna let you grow, turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let you grow, turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching from the freedom. Goes and shares. Gonna let you share. Turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let you go. Turn me around, keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land.
Ain't gonna let Joe Smith
Turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let Joe Smith turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land.
At this time, we're going to ask someone from Zen Peacemakers to please come forward and give us just a little information about who you are and your pilgrimage. I've seen this man for the last 2 months on Zoom. 2 months. 2 months. Do you need the mic?
I don't think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Willie Smith. I'm with the Zen Peacemakers. Zen Peacemakers has been an organization that's been around for 30 plus years. And it was started by a man by the name of Bernie Glassman, who was a Zen teacher. And the story goes is that he studied in Japan. He was a mathematician, wasn't he? Right.
Engineer.
An engineer. He studied aeronautics and he studied Zen, and he gave up his robes because he felt that it was important that if you're going to do Buddhism, it needs to be socially engaged. And so he started to go to organize what we're calling bearing witness retreats in Auschwitz, where Jews were murdered, and countless number of other people. And that went on for a number of years, and then they went to Bosnia-Herzegovina, it went to Rwanda, and then currently there's a bearing witness retreat in Dakota with the Dakota Indians. And so we decided to look at racism. And I think that's the common denominator in all of these bearing witness retreats is racism. What evil has been done to other people. And out of the whole Zen Peace Order, Zen Peacemakers is what's called 3 tenets. Not knowing, bearing witness, and then there's the third one. Now I should go through all 3 of them, and then you'll understand why I covered the third. The first one is not knowing is, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, because we all know, we think we know something, but we just give up preconceived notions. Let's just step right in and see what's going on. And it's in not knowing that we bear witness, you know, to the good and to the bad. And then the third, which has gone through a number of different, I call them reincarnations over the years. It's either healing action, social action, or the offering. I personally like the word the offering. It's that of what we hear and see of the good and the bad, we offer something back. And that's the reason why we're here. And when Joyce and I originally got talking about coming here, one person wrote me an email and saying, well, we want tourists to come here to Alabama. You know, Selma's is poor. We want money. We want this. We want that. Mm-hmm. And I called I spoke to Joyce and I spoke to Dr. Dawson, and I said, well, you know, this email was quite disturbing because we're not tourists. And those who know me is I know I like words, and so tourists comes from a word from a tool, for a tool that digs holes in the ground. And a tourist is someone who takes pictures and gathers souvenirs and at least can go and take comfort in a room. But a pilgrim is someone different. A pilgrim steps into whatever is going on around them. And they're willing to be made uncomfortable and get to know people. And that's what I would like to think that's why we're here. Is to get to know and to be uncomfortable. And then see what love we can do. So that's it.
Thank you so much. And again, I want to reiterate, we really appreciate you choosing Selma. But I appreciate, and I think we at Brown Chapel appreciate you wanting to come to Brown Chapel and wanting to hear our stories. I think you could tell we love telling them. But there's a reason we love telling them, because in our stories, you find the need for love. When you hear our stories, you find that need that we continue to love each other and that we not revert to those tactics and those things that we went through as young people in order for our parents to get a right that they already had. So I agree with you, Willie. I think if we can just learn to love each other. And I don't know if learn to love is the right term, because I think it's innately in all of us, the ability to love. But if we could just pull that out and not see me for the color of my skin. But the reverse of that, and I don't think we think about it a lot, is that I not see you for the color of your skin. Because it could very well happen because of those things that happened in the past, and those things that happened on the streets of Selma, the downtown streets. And as we go through this experience here in Selma, I ask that you think about, while we're trying to make peace, that you think about those things that are going on in our country today, those things that are not peaceful, and that we will each vow, regardless of the color of our skin, that we will not buy into the meanness, and that we will not revert to an America that was America in 1965. We need a new America.
Amen.
And I don't know how often you interact with your Congress people, but if you do, try to help them to understand that love and peace is the way to a better life for all Americans. We have a breakfast, continental breakfast provided by the Zen Peacemakers. We ask that we did not set tables up. We want you to, if you turn your chairs, if you need to turn your chairs around to talk to people, do whatever you need to do, because you're not telling you to listen up. So as you eat breakfast, remain loose. And I'm going to ask members of Brown Chapel if they will sit among you, if you have some questions of them about the church. This church did open its doors to the voting rights movement, even when an injunction had been issued. When Albert showed you the picture of Reverend P.H. Lewis, he fought to keep the doors of Brown Chapel open for mass meetings and for strategy sessions for SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So this church played a significant role in the voting rights movement. Diane Harris and I still work hard for voting rights. And we do think that it's very important to vote and to choose those who would govern us. Now I'm going to shut up because y'all have heard enough talk. You've heard enough talk today, but we will answer questions as we get our breakfast. If you have questions, please ask them. And you talk to Albert, get in his ear, because he has a lot of information. He experienced a lot on that 54-mile walk from Selma to Montgomery. And I do have to tell you this. I love Harry Belafonte too. And I know he has passed on, and I still love Harry Belafonte. When you're a young girl and you see a man that looks like that, it was something. So we didn't have all pain during that time. We found our joy as well. Again, thank you for coming, and let's enjoy each other. Albert did ask me to announce that if anybody wants to purchase, say, the magazine.
Yeah, that man, it's all in there.
The white book.
Selma.
This one?
Yeah.
He has that book for $12. Okay, now, you will not